The billionaire's son was born deaf, until the waitress pulled out something mysterious and the impossible happened. But when the truth surfaced, he fell to his knees begging forgiveness. Subscribe now, or this might be our last meeting. Follow, comment, and share to stay connected. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. Rain hammered against the windows of Jersey Diner as Natalie Rivera refilled coffee cups with practiced precision. Her worn uniform hung loose on her thin frame, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail that had seen better days. She kept her eyes down, moving between tables like a ghost, invisible, efficient, forgettable. That's how she survived now. Invisibility was safety. The morning crowd barely noticed her. Truckers hunched over eggs and bacon. A tired nurse scrolled through her phone. An elderly couple shared toast in comfortable silence. Just another Thursday morning in a forgotten corner of New Jersey. Then the black SUV screeched to a stop outside. Every head turned. The vehicle was completely out of place, sleek, expensive, tinted windows reflecting the gray sky. Rain pounded its polished surface as the driver's door opened. A man in a tailored charcoal suit emerged, his jaw tight with frustration. He moved to the back door and carefully lifted a small boy into his arms. Natalie's hand trembled slightly as she poured coffee, missing the cup by an inch. She caught herself, apologized quietly to the customer, but her eyes were locked on the entrance. Ethan Caldwell pushed through the door with his son pressed against his chest. Water dripped from his expensive coat onto the cracked linoleum. His presence filled the small diner instantly, money, power, and barely concealed irritation radiating from him like heat. But Natalie barely saw him. Her entire focus was on the boy. Liam Caldwell was 6 years old, with dark curls plastered to his forehead and wide, observant eyes. He didn't cry or fuss despite being soaked. He simply watched. His gaze swept across the diner with intense curiosity, taking in every detail. But there was something profoundly different about how he observed the world. Natalie saw it immediately, the slight delay in his reactions, the way his eyes tracked movement rather than sound. When a dish crashed in the kitchen, everyone jumped, except Liam. He felt his father's body tense and only then looked around, searching for the source of disruption through visual clues alone. Her heart clenched. She knew that isolation, that silent world. "Table for two, somewhere quiet," Ethan demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. His voice carried the authority of someone unaccustomed to being denied anything. "Of course, sir." Natalie gestured toward the back corner booth, her voice soft and professional. She grabbed 2 menus with hands that wouldn't quite stop shaking. As they settled into the booth, she noticed more details that made her chest tighten. Liam's small hand kept reaching toward his right pocket, where a hearing aid was clearly visible but obviously turned off. The boy's fingers moved in small, frustrated gestures, not quite signs, but close. Self-soothing patterns she recognized from years ago, from another life. She approached with water glasses, forcing herself to breathe normally. "Can I start you with something to drink?" Ethan barely glanced at her. Orange juice for him, black coffee for me. He was already pulling out his phone, stress etched in every line of his face. But Liam was staring directly at Natalie. Not at her face, at her hands. Specifically at the way her fingers rested on the notepad. Waiting. Natalie made a decision that would change everything. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her right hand and formed a simple sign. "Hello." Liam's eyes went wide. His mouth opened in surprise, and he sat up straighter, suddenly electric with attention. His small hands flew up, signing back with eager, imperfect movements. "Hello, you know signs?" Natalie felt tears threatening, but pushed them down. She nodded, kneeling beside the booth to be at his eye level. She signed slowly, clearly. "Yes, my name is Natalie. What's yours?" "Liam." His face transformed with a smile so bright it could have lit the entire diner. He turned to his father, tugging insistently at his sleeve, signing rapidly. Ethan had frozen completely, phone forgotten in his hand. He stared at Natalie as if she'd just performed a magic trick. "How?" His voice caught. "How do you know ASL?" Natalie stood quickly, her professional mask slipping back into place. "Just personal interest, sir." The lie tasted bitter. "I'll get those drinks." But as she turned away, she felt small fingers grab the hem of her worn uniform. Liam held on, looking up at her with desperate hope. He signed one more thing, a childish, simplified gesture she hadn't seen in 3 years. "Please stay." Behind him, Ethan Caldwell's expression shifted from shock to something more complex. Gratitude, suspicion, and a desperate need all tangled together. "Wait," he said, his commanding tone softer now. "Who are you really?" Natalie's breath caught in her throat. The past she'd buried, the life she'd lost, the person she'd been, it all came rushing back with crushing force. She couldn't answer. She could only feel the weight of what she'd just begun, knowing there was no taking it back now. "I learned it years ago," Natalie said carefully, pulling gently free from Liam's grasp. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Just a hobby. I'll get your drinks." She retreated toward the kitchen before Ethan could ask more questions, feeling his analytical gaze burning into her back. But when she returned with orange juice and coffee, Liam was waiting. The moment she set down his glass, his small hands grabbed her sleeve again, signing rapidly. "More! Teach me more. Nobody here knows signs." "Liam, let her work," Ethan said, though his tone lacked conviction. He was watching Natalie with unsettling intensity, trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't known existed 5 minutes ago. Outside, the rain intensified into a downpour. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Inside the diner, the noise level rose, clashing dishes, shouted orders, the espresso machine's high-pitched shriek. Normal chaos. But Liam's body went rigid. His hands clamped over his ears, face twisting with distress. The hearing aid in his pocket remained off. But something about the vibrations, the pressure changes, clearly affected him. He began to rock slightly, breathing too fast. Natalie didn't think. She simply moved. She knelt again, positioning herself in Liam's line of sight, and placed both hands gently on the table in front of him. Then she began tapping. Not random beats, but a specific rhythm. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. A grounding technique using vibroacoustic perception. Something only trained specialists in auditory processing would know. Liam's eyes locked onto her hands. His breathing began to slow, synchronizing with the pattern. After 30 seconds, his shoulders relaxed. The panic drained from his face. Ethan's frown deepened. "How did you—" He stopped, studying her with new wariness. "That's not just ASL. What are you?" Several customers had noticed now. An older woman, 2 booths over, had her phone out, filming. A teenager whispered to his friend, pointing. Natalie felt the familiar spike of fear, exposure, attention, danger, but she couldn't stop. Not with Liam looking at her like she'd just given him something precious. "It's just a calming technique," she said quietly, standing up. "Some children respond well to rhythmic input." "Some children," Ethan repeated slowly. "Or deaf children specifically." Before Natalie could deflect, Liam tugged her sleeve again. He signed a question, his small face serious. "Can you teach me to feel music?" The question pierced her. It was so specific, so heartbreakingly sophisticated, that Natalie knew immediately. This child had been in therapy. Good therapy, probably. But something wasn't right. The way he'd responded to the rhythmic tapping, the precision of his vibroacoustic awareness, these weren't typical presentations of profound deafness. She made another decision she'd regret. "Try this," she signed, then demonstrated a simple exercise, placing his hand flat on the table while she tapped different patterns. "Can you tell which pattern is which?" Liam's face lit up with concentration. He matched 4 out of 5 patterns perfectly, his responses faster and more accurate than they should have been given his diagnosis. Natalie felt her professional instincts roaring back to life, analysis flooding her mind. The residual hearing this implied, the potential for intervention, the possibilities. "That's remarkable," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "Where did you learn this?" Ethan demanded again, leaning forward. "And don't say personal interest. I've worked with speech therapists, audiologists, specialists from 3 countries. You're doing something they haven't." Natalie's throat tightened. "It's just an old habit, Mr. Caldwell. How do you know my name?" She'd slipped. Of course she'd slipped. The credit card," she improvised. "When you handed it over." He hadn't handed over any credit card. They both knew it. The tension stretched between them until Liam broke it, signing with the clumsy earnestness of a child who'd found something wonderful. "Please come back tomorrow. Please." It was a simple sign, but the configuration, the specific hand shape, was one Natalie hadn't seen since Johns Hopkins, since her old life, since everything had shattered. Ethan saw her reaction. Something in his expression shifted from suspicion to desperate hope. "He likes you," he said quietly. "He never People don't usually connect with him like this. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a vulnerability that contradicted everything about his powerful presence. Would you be willing to give me your number? Maybe you could, I don't know, spend time with him. I'd pay, of course. Whatever your rate is. Danger. Every instinct screamed it. Getting involved meant questions. Questions meant the past surfacing. The past surfacing meant everything she'd rebuilt, fragile as it was, could crumble again. But Liam was looking at her with such hope. I don't think that's a good idea, Natalie said softly. Ethan's face fell. Liam's hands signed Y. Over and over, distress returning. I'm just a waitress, Natalie continued, hating herself. I'm not qualified to. You're more qualified than anyone I've met, Ethan interrupted. His voice dropped, becoming almost pleading. Please, just think about it. Natalie felt the trap closing. She felt the past and present colliding. She felt everything she'd sworn to never touch again pulling her back in. She wrote her number on the order pad with shaking hands, tore off the page, and placed it on the table. Then she walked away before she could see the gratitude in Ethan's eyes or the joy in Liam's signs. In the kitchen, she pressed her back against the wall and tried to breathe. She'd just made a terrible mistake. She knew it with absolute certainty. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something she'd thought was dead. Purpose. Natalie's shift ended at 3 p.m., but she couldn't leave. Not yet. She sat in the back booth, the same one where Liam had smiled at her, with her cracked phone screen glowing in her trembling hands. She typed carefully, Liam Caldwell diagnosis. The search results loaded slowly on the diner's weak Wi-Fi. Celebrity gossip sites, society page mentions, photos of Ethan at charity galas. Then, buried on the third page, a leaked medical document summary from a disability advocacy forum discussing misdiagnoses in wealthy families. Her breath caught. Patient, Liam Caldwell, age 6. Diagnosis, profound bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. Irreversible. Prognosis, permanent deafness with minimal intervention potential. Natalie's professional instincts, dormant for 3 years, roared to life. She scrolled frantically through the document summary, her heart pounding harder with each line. The evaluation dates, the testing protocols, the conclusions. Then she saw it. Autoacoustic emissions test, not performed. The phone nearly slipped from her hands. She read the line again, then again, her mind racing through the implications. OAE testing was fundamental, absolutely essential for diagnosing sensorineural hearing loss. It measured the inner ear's response to sound, distinguishing between different types of hearing impairment. Without it, any diagnosis was incomplete, potentially wrong, dangerously wrong. Her pulse thundered in her ears. This wasn't just an oversight. In a case involving a child from one of the wealthiest families in America, with access to the best medical care money could buy, this absence was impossible, unless someone had deliberately omitted it. The memory hit her like a physical blow. 3 years ago, Johns Hopkins, a child named Marcus, age 4. Equipment that should have worked but didn't. Test results that made no sense. Her supervisor, Dr. Adrian Cole, insisting the diagnosis was correct, that her concerns were unfounded. The machine failing during the critical procedure, Marcus's mother screaming, the investigation that followed, the forged signatures on reports she'd never written, the fabricated evidence of negligence, her license suspended, then revoked, her reputation destroyed. Adrian's promotion announced 2 weeks later, along with the prestigious research grant that should have been hers. She'd tried to warn them. No one had listened. Her phone buzzed. Aunt Rosa. Mija, can you pick up bread on the way home? And I need insulin. The pharmacy said my prescription is ready. Natalie's voice came out steadier than she felt. Of course, Tia. I'll be there soon. You sound upset. What happened? Nothing, just tired. I'll see you in an hour. She ended the call before Rosa could press further. The bus ride home took 45 minutes. Plenty of time for her mind to spiral. She stared out the rain-streaked window, but all she could see was Liam's face. The way he'd responded to the rhythmic tapping, the precision of his vibroacoustic awareness, the speed of his pattern recognition. None of it matched profound sensorineural deafness. None of it. A child with that diagnosis wouldn't have such acute sensitivity to vibration patterns, wouldn't track environmental changes with that level of sophistication. The residual hearing capacity Liam demonstrated suggested something else entirely, possibly conductive hearing loss, possibly auditory processing disorder, possibly even functional hearing that had been systematically suppressed by incorrect intervention, which meant he might not need to be deaf at all. The thought was terrifying, because if she was right, then someone had made a catastrophic error. Or worse, someone had done this deliberately, just like with Marcus, just like with her. "I can't," she whispered to her reflection in the bus window. "I can't go through this again." She'd lost everything last time, her career, her reputation, her mother's medical care. Elena Rivera had died 6 months after Natalie lost her job, unable to afford the treatment that might have saved her. The guilt was a stone Natalie carried every single day. "I can't save everyone," she told herself firmly. "It's not my responsibility anymore." But Liam's smile haunted her. That pure, unguarded joy when he'd realized someone could communicate with him. That desperate sign, "Please come back." At her apartment, Rosa was asleep in the worn armchair, insulin pump beeping softly. Natalie set down the bread and pharmacy bag quietly, then retreated to her tiny bedroom, barely more than a closet with a mattress on the floor. She pulled her battered backpack from under the bed. Her hand shook as she unzipped the hidden inner pocket she hadn't touched in 3 years. The device was smaller than a smartphone, custom-built, wrapped carefully in an anti-static bag. She'd designed it herself during her final year at Hopkins, before everything fell apart. A prototype audiometric diagnostic tool that could detect hearing capacity through non-invasive neural response patterns. Traditional tests relied on behavioral responses, raising a hand, pressing a button. Her device measured involuntary neural activity, impossible to fake or misinterpret. It had been revolutionary, until Adrian had stolen her research, discredited her work, and buried the prototype's existence to prevent anyone from validating her claims about Marcus's misdiagnosis. She'd kept it hidden, afraid someone would use it as evidence of her instability. But it worked. She knew it worked. Natalie held the device in both hands, feeling its familiar weight. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of silence. 3 years of telling herself she could never be that person again. But what if Liam didn't have to be deaf? What if she could prove it? What if this time she could actually save the child? The fear was overwhelming. The risk was enormous. If she was wrong, or if she was right and no one believed her, she'd lose what little she had left. Rosa needed her. They barely survived as it was, but Liam needed her more. Natalie carefully rewrapped the device and placed it back in the hidden pocket. She didn't zip the bag closed, not yet. Tomorrow she would decide. Tonight she would just sit with the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she could be who she used to be. Just one more time, even if it destroyed her all over again. Ethan Caldwell walked into Jersey Diner at 11 a.m. the next morning, and Natalie knew immediately something was wrong. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed with exhaustion. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "I need to talk to you," he said without preamble, his voice raw. "Please." Natalie glanced at her manager, who was already frowning at the interruption. "I'm working. Liam had a crisis last night." Ethan's composure cracked. He was screaming, signing about pain, about noise inside his head. "The doctors gave him sedatives, but he kept asking for you. He kept signing your name." Guilt and alarm warred in Natalie's chest. "Mr. Caldwell, I'm not qualified to. You did something yesterday. Something that helped him." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Please, I'm not asking for miracles. Just talk to him. 5 minutes. I'll pay you whatever you want." Every instinct screamed at Natalie to refuse, to protect herself, to stay hidden. But then Ethan pulled out his phone and showed her a video from the night before. Liam, in expensive pajamas, tears streaming down his face, hands moving frantically. The signs were clear even through his distress. Hurt. Noise inside. "Make it stop," want Natalie. The specific combination of signs, noise inside paired with hurt, indicated something clinical. Not emotional distress, not simple pain. This was neurological, auditory processing related. This was a symptom pattern she'd seen before in children with misdiagnosed conductive hearing loss, where pressure and fluid buildup created phantom auditory sensations. This was diagnostic. Where is he now? The question escaped before Natalie could stop it. "In the car. I didn't know if you'd be willing." Natalie looked toward the kitchen, toward her manager, toward the life she'd carefully constructed from ruins. Safe. small, invisible. Then she untied her apron. My shift ends in 20 minutes. I'll clock out early. She followed Ethan to the black SUV, her backpack heavy on her shoulder. Inside, Liam was strapped into a booster seat, his face pale and exhausted. When he saw Natalie, his eyes widened and his hands flew up. "You came! You came!" She slid into the seat beside him, signing slowly. "I'm here. Tell me what hurts." Liam's small hands moved with surprising precision. Inside my ears, like buzzing, like screaming. But quiet. Nobody hears it but me. Natalie's blood ran cold. Tinnitus with pressure sensation in a supposedly profoundly deaf child. Impossible. Unless the diagnosis was wrong. "We're going to Dr. Matthews at Princeton Medical," Ethan said from the driver's seat. "She's the best pediatric audiologist in the state." They drove in tense silence. Natalie held Liam's hand, feeling his pulse too fast against her palm. At the hospital, a gleaming private facility that probably cost more per visit than Natalie made in a month, she followed at a distance, trying to seem like just a family friend. The waiting room was pristine. Soft lighting, expensive art, a fish tank built into the wall. Everything designed to project calm competence. Dr. Matthews appeared, mid-50s, designer glasses, the confident air of someone who'd never been questioned. "Mr. Caldwell, bring Liam back, please." "Can she come?" Ethan gestured to Natalie. He's calmer when she's around. Dr. Matthews' gaze swept over Natalie's cheap jeans and faded jacket with barely concealed dismissal. "Family only during examinations." "She is family," Ethan lied smoothly. "Liam's aunt." The doctor's expression said she didn't believe it but wouldn't argue with a man who donated millions to the hospital. "Fine, but please don't interfere." In the examination room, Natalie stood in the corner, trying to be invisible. But her trained eye caught everything. The outdated audiometric equipment, the examination protocols that hadn't been updated in a decade, Dr. Matthews's explanations that used terminology Natalie recognized as obsolete, replaced by more accurate methods years ago. "As I've explained before," Dr. Matthews said with practiced patience, "Liam has profound bilateral sensorineural hearing loss. The cochlear implant we discussed remains the only viable option for any auditory input. But the crisis last night," Ethan began, "likely anxiety-related, common in deaf children who feel isolated. The sedative should help." Natalie bit her tongue so hard she tasted blood. Anxiety-related. Sedatives. Dismissing clear neurological symptoms as emotional distress. It was criminal negligence masquerading as expertise. "I need to use the restroom," she said quietly. No one objected. In the hallway, she walked with purpose, like she belonged, past the nurse's station, past other examination rooms, following the room numbers until she found Liam's designated consultation office, currently empty. She shouldn't. She absolutely shouldn't. Natalie slipped inside and closed the door. On the desk lay Liam's medical file, open to the diagnostic summary. Her hands shook as she photographed each page with her phone. Then she saw them. The signatures at the bottom of the evaluation forms. Her vision narrowed. The handwriting was familiar. Too familiar. Dr. Adrian Cole, consulting audiologist. Her ex-fiancé. Her destroyer. The man who'd sabotaged her career had also signed off on Liam's diagnosis. The signatures looked authentic, but Natalie had learned to spot Adrian's forgery techniques. The slight variation in pressure. The microscopic tremor in certain letters that appeared when he copied someone else's signature. These were fake, just like the ones that had destroyed her. She photographed everything, her mind racing. This was it. This was proof. Not just that Liam was misdiagnosed, but that it was deliberate, systematic. The same pattern that had destroyed her was being used on others. On the desk beside the file sat Liam's hearing aid, removed for the examination. Without thinking, Natalie picked it up and accessed the programming interface, something only trained audiologists could do. The settings were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Whoever had programmed this device had essentially guaranteed Liam would hear nothing, even if he had residual hearing capacity. She made the adjustment in 30 seconds. Not a full reprogramming that would be obvious, but a subtle shift that might allow Liam to actually hear if he had any capacity at all. The door opened. Ethan Caldwell stood in the doorway, his face transforming from confusion to fury as he saw Natalie holding his son's hearing aid, his son's private medical files spread across the desk. What the hell are you doing? His voice was deadly quiet. Natalie's mouth went dry. She'd been caught, doing exactly what she'd been accused of 3 years ago, tampering with medical equipment without authorization, invading patient privacy. It didn't matter that she was trying to help. It didn't matter that she was right. She'd just made the same mistake that had destroyed her life the first time. And this time, there would be no mercy. I asked you a question. Ethan's voice was ice and fury. What the hell are you doing with my son's medical records? Natalie's hands froze, the hearing aid still clutched in her palm. The file pages seemed to glow accusingly under the fluorescent lights. Her throat closed. The room spun. It was happening again, exactly like before. Caught. Condemned. Destroyed. Her voice came out as a whisper. I can explain. You broke into a private medical office. Ethan's composure shattered completely. You're touching equipment without authorization. Who the hell do you think you are? Footsteps pounded in the hallway. Dr. Matthews appeared, her face contorted with professional outrage. Behind her, 2 nurses and a security guard crowded into the doorway. What is going on, Doctor? Matthews demanded, then saw Natalie holding the hearing aid. Her expression shifted to horrified understanding. Did she tamper with the device? Oh my God, call security, now! Wait. Natalie tried to speak, but the walls were closing in. The faces, the accusations. It was Johns Hopkins all over again. The review board. Adrian's calm lies. Her career ending in a windowless room while people who'd never listened to her decided her fate. I found inconsistencies in his diagnosis, she managed, the words tumbling out desperately. The OAE test was never performed. The signatures on the evaluation forms are forged. Someone deliberately misdiagnosed him. You're insane. Ethan's voice cut like a blade. He stepped closer, towering over her, his face a mask of betrayal and rage. I brought you here because my son liked you. Because I thought... He stopped, shaking his head. You're a waitress. A nobody who pretended to care about a vulnerable child to do what? Steal information? Tamper with medical equipment? No. The word burst from Natalie. I'm trying to help him. Your son isn't profoundly deaf. The diagnosis is wrong. Dr. Matthews is one of the most respected audiologists in the country. Ethan snapped. But you, some random woman from a diner, somehow know better. This is either mental illness or manipulation, and I don't care which. Behind them, Liam had followed his father into the room. The boy's face was pale with confusion and fear. His hands moved frantically, signing, Stop! She's good. She helps me. Don't hurt her. But no one was watching him. No one understood enough ASL to catch the desperate defense. Ethan was focused entirely on Natalie, his anger palpable. I recommend we contact the authorities, Dr. Matthews said coldly, moving to stand beside Ethan in a united front. This woman has violated HIPAA regulations, trespassed in a restricted area, and tampered with medical equipment. This is criminal. Please. Natalie's voice broke. Just listen. The test results don't match his responses. He showed vibroacoustic sensitivity patterns that are impossible with profound sensorineural deafness. I know because Because you what? Ethan's eyes narrowed dangerously. You've treated deaf children. You have medical training. Then why are you serving coffee in New Jersey? The question hung in the air like an executioner's blade. Natalie couldn't answer. Because the truth, that she'd been destroyed by lies, that her career had been stolen, that she'd lost everything, would sound exactly like the delusions of someone unstable. I thought so, Ethan said quietly, his anger shifting to something worse. Pity. You're sick. Or desperate. Either way, you're dangerous. The hallway had filled with onlookers. Other patients, staff members. Someone was definitely filming. Natalie could see phone cameras pointed at her, recording her destruction in real time. She's playing dress-up as a specialist, Dr. Matthews announced, her voice carrying to the growing audience. I've seen this before. Obsessive behavior, boundary violations. She's fixated on this family. The words landed like physical blows, each one an echo of what they'd said about her at Hopkins. Obsessive, unstable, dangerous. The labels that had followed her ever since. I'm not, Natalie tried again, but her voice failed. The shame was suffocating, the humiliation total. Liam was crying now, signing desperately. No, wrong. Listen to her, please. But his father pulled him back protectively, as if Natalie were a threat to the child she was trying to save. Security will escort you out. Ethan said, his voice now empty of emotion. If you ever, and I mean ever, come near my son again, I will have you arrested. Do you understand? Natalie nodded numbly. She set the hearing aid down on the desk with shaking hands and moved toward the door. The crowd parted, faces full of judgment and sick curiosity. Someone whispered loudly enough for her to hear, "Crazy bitch. Should be locked up." As she passed Ethan, he leaned in close. "I feel sorry for you," he said quietly. "But that doesn't give you the right to use a child's disability to feed whatever delusion you're living with. Stay away from us." The security guard gripped her elbow, not roughly, but firmly, and led her through the gauntlet of stairs. Her vision blurred with tears. Her chest felt crushed. She couldn't breathe. In the parking lot, the guard released her. "You need to leave the property. If you return, we'll call the police." Natalie walked to the bus stop on legs that barely functioned. Behind her, through the hospital's glass doors, she could see Ethan holding Liam, see Dr. Matthews speaking with authority, see the crowd dispersing with their story locked in place. She'd tried to save a child and instead had proven every terrible thing anyone had ever said about her. She'd invaded privacy, touched equipment without authorization, made wild accusations against respected professionals. She'd done it all again. The exact same pattern that had destroyed her the first time. And now, just like before, no one would believe her. No one would listen. The truth didn't matter when it came from someone already branded as broken. Natalie collapsed onto the bus stop bench and sobbed into her hands, feeling her life, what little remained of it, crumbling to dust for the second time. The video hit social media at 11:47 p.m. "Waitress breaks into Billionaire's son's medical office," read the headline on the first viral post. By midnight, it had 200,000 views. By morning, over 2 million. Natalie discovered it when her phone started buzzing uncontrollably at 6 a.m. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. Voicemails filled with curses and threats. Her social media accounts, barely used, flooded with comments calling her everything from gold digger to psychotic stalker. The video was everywhere. Different angles. Multiple versions. Her face frozen in a dozen screenshots, looking guilty, desperate, unhinged. Ethan Caldwell's voice. "Stay away from my son." Dr. Matthews. Playing dress-up as a specialist. The security guard escorting her out like a criminal. The narrative had solidified overnight. Delusional waitress obsessed with wealthy family, dangerous, unstable, possibly trying to extort money or gain proximity to power. Comment sections filled with armchair psychologists diagnosing her. Influencers made reaction videos. True crime, TikTokers speculated about her motives. "Girl, this is giving single white female energy," one popular creator announced to 400,000 followers. She saw a cute kid and a rich dad and totally manufactured this whole savior fantasy. Natalie sat on her apartment floor, scrolling through the destruction, unable to look away. Each new post felt like another shovelful of dirt on her grave. At 9 a.m. she tried to go to work. The diner's parking lot was full of unfamiliar cars. Inside, her manager Tony stood behind the counter, face grave. "Natalie." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "We need to talk." "I can explain. The phone's been ringing all night. Threats. People saying they'll boycott us if we keep you employed. I got 24 emails. Someone spray-painted 'Psycho works here' on the dumpster. Tony, please. I need this job. My aunt. I'm sorry. I can't have you on the schedule right now. For safety. Yours and everyone else's." The words hit like a hammer. "You're firing me. I'm asking you to take some time off, until this blows over." "I can't afford." Her voice cracked. "Tony, I have rent, my aunt's medical bills. I'm sorry, Natalie. I really am. But I have a business to protect." She was still standing there, numb, when the door chimed. A woman walked in, blonde, expensively dressed, radiating controlled fury. Natalie recognized her from society page photos linked to Ethan, Vanessa Whitmore, his ex-girlfriend. "You're her?" Vanessa's voice was pure venom. "The crazy bitch stalking Ethan's son?" "I wasn't," Natalie started, but Vanessa was already moving. She grabbed a water pitcher from the counter, the one with lemon slices and soap suds from a recent wash, and threw the entire contents directly into Natalie's face. The cold, soapy water hit like a slap. It soaked her hair, her clothes, dripped down her face. The diner fell silent. Then someone laughed. Then another person. Then phones came out, recording. "Stay away from them," Vanessa hissed. You're pathetic. A nobody who thought she could claw her way into his life by pretending to care about a disabled child. You make me sick. Natalie stood there, dripping, shaking, unable to speak. The humiliation was so complete, so absolute, that she felt like she might shatter into pieces. Around her, customers filmed, posted, shared, added fuel to the fire consuming her life. Tony made a helpless gesture. Natalie, you should go. She walked out into the November cold, soaked and shivering. At home, Aunt Rosa was watching the news coverage, tears streaming down her weathered face. Mija, she whispered. What happened? They're saying terrible things. I tried to help. Natalie's voice was hollow. I saw that the boy was misdiagnosed. I tried to help. But breaking into the office. I know it was wrong. But Rosa, he doesn't have to be deaf. Someone deliberately gave him a false diagnosis. The same person who destroyed me before. Rosa's expression shifted to fear. Adrian, you think? I know. I saw his signatures. Forged. Just like last time. Then you need to go to the authorities. Show them. With what proof? Screenshots I took while committing trespassing? They'll destroy me, Rosa. Again. Only this time it's worse because it's public. Because everyone's watching. That afternoon, Princeton Medical Hospital released an official statement. Dr. Matthews's photo appeared on news sites alongside her credentials, Johns Hopkins graduate, 20 years of experience, numerous awards. Her quote was clinical and devastating. We take patient privacy and safety extremely seriously. The individual in question has no medical credentials and engaged in dangerous, unauthorized manipulation of sensitive medical equipment. We are cooperating fully with authorities and pursuing all legal remedies. By evening, someone had dug deeper. Old forum posts about her case at Johns Hopkins resurfaced, carefully edited to make her look guilty. Suspended audiologist targets another child, read one headline. The context, that she'd been vindicated by independent review, that the suspension was based on forged evidence, was omitted. The narrative was simple, viral, and wrong. Natalie Rivera was a disgraced medical professional with a history of boundary violations, now stalking wealthy families and endangering children. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Death threats, rape threats, promises to find her and teach her a lesson. She turned it off, but the silence was worse. Rosa held her while she cried. We can leave. Move somewhere else. Start over again. With what money? I just lost my job. We're 2 weeks from eviction as it is. Then what do we do? Natalie had no answer. She sat in her tiny bedroom, surrounded by the ruins of her life, and felt the familiar pull of despair. Maybe she should disappear, change her name, leave New Jersey, abandon everything and everyone. But her backpack sat in the corner, and inside it, wrapped carefully, was the prototype, the device that could prove everything, that could save Liam. She pulled it out and held it in her lap, running her fingers over the familiar controls. This was the end. She had nothing left to lose now. Her reputation was destroyed. Her job was gone. The entire internet thought she was dangerous. But Liam was still out there, still deaf, still misdiagnosed, still suffering under the care of the man who'd destroyed her. Natalie made a decision. If her life was already over, if she had nothing left to protect, then maybe, just maybe, she could use her destruction for something meaningful. She'd been silenced once. She wouldn't be silenced again, even if it meant burning whatever remained to ashes. Natalie locked herself in her bedroom for 3 days. Rosa brought soup she didn't eat, and tea she let go cold. The world outside continued its feeding frenzy, new videos, new accusations, new theories about the psycho waitress. But Natalie had stopped watching. Instead, she watched Liam. She'd recorded him on her phone that first day at the diner, just brief clips she'd taken discreetly while pretending to check messages. Now she played them frame by frame, analyzing every micro-movement with the trained eye she'd spent years developing at Johns Hopkins. There, at timestamp 147. The espresso machine shrieked behind the counter, a high-frequency metallic sound. Liam's right hand twitched, rising slightly before he caught himself. Not a startle reflex from vibration, an auditory response, impossible in profound bilateral sensorineural deafness. She rewound, watched again, enhanced the audio on her laptop. The frequency peaked at 4,000 hertz, well within the range that profound deafness would completely eliminate. Yet Liam had reacted, however subtly. At timestamp 322, a customer's chair scraped against the floor. Liam's eyes tracked left, toward the sound source, before any visual cue appeared. Auditory localization. Another impossibility. At timestamp 5:58, someone dropped silverware. Liam's pupils dilated, an involuntary response to unexpected auditory stimulus. His father's body had tensed a fraction of a second later from the vibration, but Liam had responded first. To sound, not vibration. Natalie's hands shook as she compiled the evidence. She cross-referenced the micro-responses with the diagnostic criteria from his leaked medical file. Nothing matched. The reaction patterns suggested moderate to severe hearing loss. Significant, yes, but not the profound, irreversible deafness diagnosed. She pulled up the OAE test protocols on her laptop. Autoacoustic emissions testing measured the inner ear's response to sound by detecting acoustic energy produced by outer hair cells. If those cells functioned at all, they would produce measurable emissions. The test was objective, involuntary, impossible to fake, and it had never been performed on Liam Caldwell. Why? The question gnawed at her. In any legitimate pediatric audiology evaluation, OAE testing was foundational. Skipping it was like diagnosing a broken bone without an X-ray. It simply wasn't done, unless someone wanted an incomplete picture, unless someone needed to hide residual hearing capacity. She opened the photographs she'd taken of Liam's file before being caught. The signatures at the bottom of the evaluation forms, Dr. Adrian Cole's name appeared 3 times. She zoomed in, examining the minute details she'd been trained to recognize. The pressure variations, the slight tremor in the upstroke of the C, the microscopic hesitation in the connecting stroke between O and L, forged, all of them, just like the signatures that had destroyed her career. The exact same technique Adrian had used to fabricate evidence of her negligence 3 years ago. He'd signed her name to reports she'd never written, to protocols she'd never approved, and now he was doing it again, to another child, another family. But why Liam Caldwell? What did Adrian gain from misdiagnosing the son of a billionaire? The answer came as she scrolled through her research archives. A news article from 6 months ago. Caldwell Foundation awards $50 million research grant for pediatric cochlear implant innovation. The recipient, Adrian Cole's Research Consortium. Her blood ran cold. If Liam was diagnosed as profoundly deaf, the foundation would continue funding research into implant technology. Adrian's research, his grants, his reputation, built on a lie, built on a child's stolen hearing. Natalie pulled her prototype from its case and examined it under her desk lamp. The device was crude compared to modern equipment, but its underlying principle was revolutionary. It measured neural response patterns to auditory stimuli using non-invasive electromagnetic resonance, detecting brain activity that indicated hearing capacity, even when behavioral responses were absent or suppressed. Traditional audiometric testing required cooperation, raising a hand, pressing a button, indicating awareness of sound. Children could be conditioned to not respond. Equipment could be miscalibrated, results could be manipulated, but neural activity didn't lie. The brain processed sound whether the child reacted or not. Her prototype could detect that processing, proving hearing capacity that standard tests missed. It was why Adrian had stolen her research, why he'd destroyed her to bury the technology. Because if this device became standard, his entire career of profitable misdiagnoses would be exposed. Rosa knocked softly on the door. "Mija, you need to eat something." "I can't. You've been in there for 3 days." "I know." Silence. Then, "This boy, he needs you, doesn't he?" Natalie's throat tightened. "Yes, and if you do nothing, he'll get a cochlear implant he doesn't need. It will destroy what residual hearing he has. He'll lose any chance of natural hearing development, and Adrian will get away with it. Again. But if you try to help, I'll lose everything. Again. Probably worse this time. I could be arrested. Aunt Rosa, if I get a criminal record, who'll take care of you?" Rosa opened the door and sat on the edge of the bed. Her weathered hands took Natalie's face gently. "When your mother was dying, you know what she said to me?" Natalie shook her head, tears starting. She said, "Rosa, our Natalie has a gift. She hears what others can't. She sees what others miss. Don't let them take that from her." "But Mija, they already did take it. 3 years ago, when you stopped fighting, I tried to fight. No one listened. So make them listen." Rosa's voice was fierce. "That boy is counting on you. You're the only one who knows the truth. Yes, it might destroy us. Yes, we might lose everything. But we've already lost everything, haven't we? What's left to protect? Natalie looked around her tiny room. The cracked walls, the threadbare blanket, the life built from ruins. Rosa was right. They had nothing. They were nothing in the world's eyes, which meant they had nothing left to lose. If I do this, Natalie whispered, I need to be certain. Absolutely certain. Are you? Natalie looked at the prototype in her lap, then at the video evidence frozen on her laptop screen. Liam's small hand twitching at the sound he wasn't supposed to hear. Yes, she said. I'm certain. She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a pack of batteries, still sealed. Her hands were steady now as she unwrapped them and loaded them into the prototype. The device hummed to life, its small screen glowing green. 3 years of silence, 3 years of hiding, 3 years of letting fear control her. It ended tonight. The storm hit at 9 p.m., transforming New Jersey into a waterlogged nightmare. Rain fell in sheets, turning streets into rivers. Lightning cracked the sky open. Thunder shook windows. Most people had the sense to stay inside. Natalie walked through it anyway. She'd put on her diner uniform, the only professional clothing she owned, and her thin jacket that did nothing against the cold. The prototype was wrapped in plastic bags inside her backpack. Her phone was off. There was no turning back now. The Caldwell estate was 40 minutes away on foot. She knew the address from the leaked documents, from the news coverage, from the videos showing Ethan's mansion in the background. It sat behind iron gates in a neighborhood where security cameras covered every inch and people like Natalie didn't exist except to serve. By the time she reached the gates, she was soaked through. Her teeth chattered. Her fingers were numb. But she pressed the intercom button with determination, born from desperation. This is private property, a voice crackled through. Leave now or we're calling the police. My name is Natalie Rivera. I need to speak with Ethan Caldwell. It's about his son. Ma'am, Mr. Caldwell has a restraining order filed against you. Leave immediately. Please. Her voice cracked. Please, 5 minutes. That's all I need. Liam's diagnosis is wrong. I can prove it. Security is en route. You need to. A light appeared in a second-floor window. Small hands pressed against the glass. Even from a distance, even through the rain and darkness, Natalie recognized Liam's silhouette. He saw her. His hands moved frantically, signing her name, then beating against the window. Natalie! Natalie! Liam! She called out, knowing he couldn't hear her, but unable to stop herself. Liam! I'm here! The front door burst open. Ethan Caldwell appeared, and even through the rain, Natalie could see his fury. He wore a dress shirt and slacks, barefoot, hair disheveled. He looked like a man who'd been putting his son to bed when his security system alerted him to an intruder. Get off my property! He strode toward the gate, his voice carrying over the storm. I told you to stay away from us. I know. Natalie stepped closer to the gate, rain streaming down her face. I know I have no right to be here. I know you think I'm crazy. But Mr. Caldwell, Ethan, your son isn't profoundly deaf. The diagnosis is wrong. I can prove it. You broke into a hospital office and tampered with medical equipment. Ethan spat. You're lucky I haven't pressed charges. Leave. Now. The OAE test was never performed. The words rushed out. Autoacoustic emissions testing, it's fundamental for diagnosing sensorineural hearing loss. Without it, the diagnosis is incomplete. Liam shows response patterns to auditory stimuli that are impossible with profound deafness. I documented them. I analyzed them. He has residual hearing capacity that's being suppressed by incorrect device programming. Dr. Matthews is working with Dr. Adrian Cole, the man who signed Liam's evaluation forms with forged signatures, the same man who destroyed my career 3 years ago using the exact same technique. That made Ethan pause. What? I was a pediatric audiologist at Johns Hopkins. Natalie's voice shook, from cold and from the weight of the confession. I had a promising career until Adrian Cole sabotaged equipment, forged my signatures, and framed me for negligence to steal my research. He's doing it again. To your son. Because your foundation gave him $50 million for cochlear implant research, and he needs Liam to be profoundly deaf to justify that funding. Ethan stared at her through the gate. Rain poured between them. Lightning illuminated his face, confusion, anger, but also the first hint of doubt. You're asking me to believe that multiple respected doctors, including Dr. Matthews, are part of a conspiracy to misdiagnose my son? That they're all lying? No. I think most of them are sincere, but working with incomplete information. Cole manipulates the data they receive. He's brilliant at it. That's why he's never been caught. And you expect me to trust you? A woman who's been stalking my family, who broke into a hospital, who the entire internet has labeled dangerous? No. Natalie's voice was steady now. I don't expect you to trust me. I expect you to trust the evidence. I have a device that can measure Liam's neural response to auditory stimuli. It's non-invasive. It takes 5 minutes. If I'm wrong, you call the police and I'll go willingly. But if I'm right, you'll know the truth. Isn't that worth 5 minutes? Above them, Liam was still at the window, hands pressed to the glass, watching. Ethan looked up at his son, then back at Natalie. She saw the war in his eyes, a father's protective fury against the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, his son could hear. That maybe the sentence of deafness wasn't permanent. That maybe this soaked, shivering woman in a waitress uniform knew something that million-dollar specialists had missed. I was a senior research fellow in pediatric audiology at Johns Hopkins, Natalie said quietly. I published 12 papers on auditory neural response patterns. I developed a diagnostic prototype that could revolutionize hearing loss detection. Then Adrian Cole stole everything and destroyed me to cover his tracks. You can verify all of this. My credentials, my publications, my destruction. It's all documented. The only thing the internet got wrong is that I was guilty. Why should I believe you? Because, Natalie said, you've seen how Liam responds to me. You've watched him light up in my presence. And somewhere in your gut, you know something isn't right about his diagnosis. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be standing here listening. The silence stretched. Rain pounded. Thunder rolled. Finally, Ethan spoke. 5 minutes. That's all you get. And security stays in the room the entire time. One wrong move, one indication that you're harming him. I understand. He opened the gate. Natalie stepped through, her legs shaking, her heart pounding. She was inside. She had her chance. Now she just had to save a child while the whole world watched her burn. The living room fell silent as Natalie set up her equipment. I need absolute quiet, she said. Turn off everything, heating, electronics, all of it. Ethan nodded to security. Within minutes, the room was eerily still except for the muffled storm outside. Natalie unwrapped the prototype carefully, a small gray box with electrodes and a dated LED screen. Handmade components showed through semi-transparent casing. What is that? Ethan's voice was skeptical. A neural audiometric response detector. I designed it at Hopkins. Her hands moved with practiced confidence. Traditional tests measure behavioral responses, raising hands, pressing buttons. Those can be manipulated. This measures direct neural activity. It detects whether the auditory cortex processes sound, regardless of behavior. That's not possible. It wasn't until I built it. That's why Adrian stole my research. She looked up. And why he destroyed me, because if this became standard, every misdiagnosis he'd made would be exposed. Liam appeared in astronaut pajamas. His eyes went to Natalie, then the device. He approached cautiously, signing. What is that? Something to help us understand your ears better. She signed back. Can I show you? Liam looked at his father, who nodded. The boy climbed beside Natalie, radiating trust. She placed electrode sensors on his temples and behind his ears, familiar motions from hundreds of procedures before everything fell apart. The prototype powered up, numbers scrolling as it calibrated. Ready? She signed. Liam nodded. She initiated the first test. 25 hertz, ultra-low frequency. For 10 seconds, nothing. Then Liam's head turned slightly, tracking toward the speaker with no visual cue. Natalie's breath caught. The screen showed spikes of neural activity, clear responses in auditory processing centers. He shouldn't have reacted, she whispered. Not if the diagnosis was correct. Maybe vibration, Ethan said weakly. Not at that frequency. She adjusted settings. Let me try something definitive. The second test, a modulated frequency sweep. 500 to 2000 hertz calibrated to avoid tactile vibration, but within the range of potential residual hearing. Liam's reaction was immediate. His face lit up with wonder. His hand went to his ear, not covering, but touching, exploratory, trying to locate the sensation. Then he smiled and signed. I hear something. Like humming, like music far away. The screen exploded with data. Neural activation patterns consistent with auditory processing. Clear responses in the cochlear nucleus. Auditory cortex. The signature of sound being heard. Processed, interpreted. Ethan stood frozen, face drained of color. He just said he heard something. Yes. Tears streamed down Natalie's face as data scrolled past. Years of loss, of pain, of being told she was wrong, all crashing over her as the screen proved what she'd known. He heard it. His auditory system is functional, limited, damaged, but functional. She ran it again, varying frequency, volume, duration. Each time Liam responded. Each time the data confirmed auditory processing. Your son was never profoundly deaf, Natalie said, turning to Ethan. He has moderate to severe hearing loss. With proper intervention, proper aids, therapy, support, he could develop functional hearing. Voices, music, laughter, all of it was stolen by a false diagnosis. Ethan collapsed into a chair, hands covering his face. 6 years, his voice broke. 6 years believing my son would never hear my voice. And you're telling me it was unnecessary? Not unnecessary. He does have significant hearing loss, but it's treatable, manageable. She looked at Liam, still touching his ear with wonder. He was robbed, and I'm going to prove who did it. Ethan made the call at 6 a.m. Dr. Matthews arrived by 7:30, irritated but unable to refuse her biggest donor. Mr. Caldwell, about that woman. Run the tests again, Ethan interrupted, his voice cold. All of them, including the OAE test that was never performed. Dr. Matthews's smile faltered. I'm sorry? Otoacoustic emissions testing. Standard for diagnosing sensorineural hearing loss, correct? It was never done on my son. Why? I'd need to review the files. I already did. Ethan slid a folder across his desk. The OAE test is marked not performed with no explanation. Dr. Matthews opened the folder, face paling. This must be an error. I'm certain the test was completed. Then show me the results. Silence. Dr. Adrian Cole assured me all protocols were followed. Dr. Adrian Cole, Natalie said from the corner, who destroyed my career at Johns Hopkins using falsified documents and forged signatures. Dr. Matthews's head snapped up. You, what are you doing here? Proving I was right. Natalie placed her own folder on the desk. Neural audiometric testing I performed last night shows clear auditory cortex activation. Your diagnosis is incorrect. Liam has moderate to severe hearing loss with significant residual capacity. That's impossible. Look at these evaluation forms. Natalie revealed the forged signatures. Dr. Cole's signatures on 3 critical documents, but they're forgeries. See the pressure variation, the tremor. I've seen these exact characteristics before in documents that destroyed my career. Dr. Matthews studied them, composure cracking. This can't. Call Dr. Cole, Ethan said. Now. Voicemail. Second call. Voicemail. Third. Voicemail. By 9 a.m., Ethan's lawyers were on it. By 10 a.m., they'd uncovered financial connections, Cole's research consortium receiving Caldwell Foundation funding, grants contingent on demonstrating need for cochlear implant innovation. By 11 a.m., they'd subpoenaed Princeton medical records. 3 audiologists admitted Cole had assisted with their Liam evaluations, providing preliminary data that shaped conclusions. None had questioned his authority. A junior technician broke first. Doctor, Cole said the OAE test wasn't necessary because behavioral audiometry was conclusive. He said it would upset the child. I should have insisted, but he's so senior. Did he falsify records? I don't know. He handled all documentation himself. By noon, the picture was clear. Adrian Cole had positioned himself as consulting specialist, controlling information flow, ensuring critical tests were skipped, data interpreted in the worst light. The diagnosis supported his research narrative. And he'd done it before, multiple times, across institutions, too clever to leave obvious evidence. Until Natalie. He couldn't let your research be validated, Ethan said, reading the investigator's timeline. If neural audiometric testing became standard, every child he'd misdiagnosed would be retested. The pattern would emerge. So he destroyed me first, Natalie said quietly. Made sure no one would believe me. Where is he now? No one knew. Cole hadn't shown for morning appointments. His office was locked. Files suspiciously clean. Phone to voicemail. Home empty. He's running, a lawyer said. By 2 p.m., Cole was flagged at Newark Airport boarding a flight to Sao Paulo. By 3 p.m., in federal custody facing medical fraud, falsification of documents, and conspiracy charges. News broke at 4 p.m. Prominent audiologist arrested in medical fraud scheme. The internet pivoted instantly. Natalie was now the whistleblower who risked everything, the hero waitress, the brilliant researcher destroyed by a jealous colleague. Natalie watched from Ethan's living room, feeling numb. None of it felt real. "I'm sorry," Ethan said quietly beside her, "for everything I said, for not listening, for assuming the worst. You were protecting your son." "No, I was protecting my assumptions, my comfortable narrative." He paused. "You risked everything, safety, freedom, life, to help a child you barely knew. That's not crazy. That's heroic. I was just doing what I should have done years ago. Fight back. Tell the truth." "Well, this time truth won," Ethan said, "and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it." Outside, news vans gathered. Inside, lawyers built the case that would destroy Adrian Cole and vindicate Natalie Rivera. And upstairs, a 6-year-old boy slept, dreaming perhaps of sounds he would finally hear. The forensic audit took 3 weeks. When it concluded, the evidence was overwhelming. Dr. Adrian Cole had systematically falsified diagnostic records for 17 children across 5 institutions over 8 years. Every case followed the same pattern: incomplete testing, forged signatures, diagnoses that supported his research funding while condemning children to unnecessary interventions. The charges included medical fraud, conspiracy, falsification of federal documents, and professional misconduct. Bail was denied. His medical license was revoked pending criminal trial. His research grants were frozen and investigated. His name became synonymous with corruption, and Natalie Rivera's name was cleared. The medical board that had suspended her license 3 years earlier issued a formal apology. In light of new evidence demonstrating systematic fraud by Dr. Adrian Cole, we acknowledge that Ms. Rivera's original concerns were valid and her suspension was unjust. Her license is hereby fully reinstated with our deepest regrets. The media coverage shifted from sensational accusations to investigative reverence. The waitress who saved a billionaire's son and exposed a decade of medical fraud read one headline. Another: brilliant researcher destroys career of man who destroyed hers. Cable news ran segments. Podcasts dissected the story. Natalie's face appeared everywhere, but this time the narrative was true. She barely noticed. Her focus was entirely on Liam. The auditory rehabilitation program began immediately. With proper hearing aids, correctly calibrated this time, and intensive therapy, Liam's residual hearing capacity began to emerge. It was slow, frustrating work. His auditory cortex had been deprived of proper stimulation for 6 years. Neural pathways had to be rebuilt. Sounds had to be learned, categorized, understood. But progress came. 3 weeks into therapy, during a session in the Caldwell Mansion's converted study, it happened. Natalie was working on vowel sounds, using visual cues and tactile feedback. She made the sound, ah, holding the note, encouraging Liam to feel the vibration in her throat and try to replicate it. Liam's mouth opened, his face scrunched with concentration, and from his small throat came a sound, rough, imperfect, but unmistakably intentional. Ah. Ethan, watching from the doorway, dropped to his knees. His hands covered his mouth as tears streamed down his face. 6 years of silence, broken by his son's voice attempting its first sound. Natalie's own vision blurred. "Again, Liam, you did it. Try again." "Ah," Liam repeated, stronger this time. Then he laughed, a bright, delighted sound, and signed, "I did it. I made noise." By the 2nd month, Liam could vocalize several vowel sounds and simple consonants. By the 3rd, he was attempting words. Dada, Natty, his version of Natalie. More. Yes. Each word was a miracle. The rehabilitation success, combined with the scandal's exposure, brought opportunities Natalie had never imagined. Johns Hopkins called, offering to reinstate her fellowship with full back pay and a formal apology. Columbia invited her to head their pediatric audiology department. The National Institute of Health requested her consultation on diagnostic protocol reform. But the offer that mattered came from Ethan. "I want to fund a research center," he said one evening after Liam's session. They sat in his study, the city lights glittering through floor-to-ceiling windows, dedicated to developing and validating your neural audiometric technology, making it accessible to every child who needs it. "And I want you to lead it." Natalie stared at him. "Ethan, that would cost millions." "I have millions." What I don't have is someone I trust to use them correctly." His voice softened. "You gave me my son's voice. Let me give you the resources to give other parents the same gift." Over the following weeks, as they worked together on the center's development, something shifted between them. Gratitude evolved into respect. Respect deepened into understanding. Understanding sparked into something neither expected. One night, reviewing architectural plans for the new facility, their hands brushed over the same document. Ethan didn't pull away. Neither did Natalie. "I misjudged you," he said quietly. "Completely and terribly. I saw a poor waitress and assumed ignorance. I saw desperation and assumed manipulation. I protected my prejudices instead of protecting my son. You were scared. Any parent would be." "No." He turned to face her fully. "I was arrogant. I trusted credentials over character, status over substance. You were right there trying to save Liam, and I treated you like a criminal." His voice broke. "I threw you out. I humiliated you. I almost destroyed you again when you were being the bravest person in that hospital. You didn't know. I should have listened." He took her hand, his grip desperate. "Natalie, I am so deeply sorry. For every word, every assumption, every moment, I made you feel less than the extraordinary person you are. Can you forgive me?" The vulnerability in his eyes, this powerful man kneeling emotionally before her, broke something open in Natalie's chest. The hurt was still there, but so was understanding. So was the recognition that people make mistakes when they're terrified of losing what they love. "Yes," she whispered. "I forgive you." The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative, weighted with everything they'd survived to reach this moment. Later that week, during a therapy session, Liam looked up at both of them standing together. His small face grew serious. He took Natalie's hand in his left and Ethan's hand in his right, joining them together. Then he signed with solemn certainty, "Family." Natalie's throat tightened. She looked at Ethan, whose eyes reflected the same hope and fear and overwhelming possibility. "Yes," she signed back to Liam, "Family." For the first time in 3 years, Natalie felt the future open before her, not as a series of obstacles to survive, but as a life worth living, a second chance she'd earned through fire. The Caldwell Rivera Center for Pediatric Audiology opened on a brilliant October morning in Manhattan. The building's glass facade reflected autumn sunlight, its modern design housing equipment that represented the future of hearing diagnosis and intervention. Media filled the lobby. Cameras flashed. The guest list included senators, medical board directors, hospital administrators, and families, dozens of families whose children had been misdiagnosed, who'd found hope in Natalie's work. The center's signature technology was Natalie's neural audiometric prototype, now refined and mass-produced. In 6 months of operation during its pilot phase, the device had identified residual hearing capacity in 43 children previously diagnosed as profoundly deaf, 43 children who were now receiving appropriate intervention instead of unnecessary surgeries. The New York Times headline that morning read, "From Waitress to Revolutionary, Dr. Natalie Rivera's Journey from Disgrace to Vindication." The article detailed everything: Adrian Cole's fraud, Natalie's destruction and resurrection, the night she'd walked through a storm to save a child no one else believed could hear. During the ceremony, various speakers took the stage. Medical directors praised the center's innovation. Politicians promised funding for expanded programs. Families tearfully thanked Natalie for giving their children a future they'd been told was impossible. Then Ethan Caldwell approached the microphone. 2 years ago, he began, his voice carrying across the crowded atrium, "I was a man who trusted all the wrong things. I trusted credentials over character. I trusted status over truth. And because of that, I almost let my son remain trapped in silence. He didn't need to endure." He turned to where Natalie stood at the side of the stage, elegant in a simple blue dress, her hand held tightly by Liam, now 8, wearing his hearing aids proudly, his vocabulary expanding daily. "Doctor, Natalie Rivera risked everything to save my son. Her career, again, her freedom, her life. She walked through a storm to reach us, carrying truth in her hands and courage in her heart." His voice thickened with emotion. "She gave me my son's voice. She gave Liam his future. And she's given countless other families the same impossible gift." Ethan stepped away from the microphone. He walked to Natalie, and in front of hundreds of witnesses, cameras, and the world that had once crucified her, he dropped to one knee. The room fell silent. "Natalie Rivera," he he said, his voice trembling. "You are the most brilliant, courageous, extraordinary person I've ever known. You've given me everything that matters, and I'm asking, begging, for the honor of spending my life proving I deserve to stand beside you." He pulled a small box from his pocket. "Stay with us. With me. With Liam. Be our family. Marry me." Tears streamed down Natalie's face. She looked at Ethan, then at Liam, who was signing frantically. "Say yes! Say yes! Please!" She pulled Ethan to his feet. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes." The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but Natalie barely heard it. She was focused on Liam, who threw his arms around both of them, his delighted laughter, clear and beautiful and audible, ringing through the space. After the ceremony, Natalie found Aunt Rosa in the crowd, healthy now after months of treatment funded by Ethan's quiet intervention. The old woman pulled her close. "Your mother would be so proud, Mija. I wish she could see this. She can, and she's telling me to remind you. You were always this woman, brilliant, strong, worthy. You just needed to remember." That evening, as the celebration wound down, Natalie stood at the center's window watching the city lights. Ethan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Liam played nearby with building blocks, occasionally looking up to speak a new word he'd learned. "Do you ever wonder?" Ethan asked quietly. "What would have happened if I hadn't been cruel to you that day at the hospital? If I'd listened from the start? We wouldn't be here," Natalie said simply. "We both had to walk through the fire to reach this moment. Your pride had to break. My silence had to end. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary." Liam's voice suddenly rang out. "Mom and Addie, look!" Both froze. Liam had never combined the words before. He stood holding up his block tower proudly, waiting for her response. "Mama Natalie," Ethan repeated softly. "Is that okay?" Natalie couldn't speak through her tears. She just nodded and opened her arms as Liam ran to her, laughing that impossible laugh she'd worked so hard to let him hear. The past was finally just that, past. Not a prison, not a weight, but a story of survival that had led to this, a future filled with sound, love, and the legacy of a woman who'd refused to stay silenced. In the reflection of the window, Natalie saw herself clearly for the first time in years. Not a waitress, not a fraud, not a victim. Dr. Natalie Rivera, researcher, mother, woman who'd turned impossible into reality. And beside her, a family she'd saved and who'd saved her right back.